mean, I guess this show is all about the Cardano Summit and what's been going on. I believe both of you have been attending the summit, so I'd love to get your thoughts on how it's been, what's been good, what's been great, what's been not so great.
Shall I go first?
Yeah.
Because I went to the physical show in London, which was super cool. Just good to see people again. And I live up north, so traveling down to the city, it's pretty exciting. So for me, the most exciting thing, first of all, as soon as you got into the venue, there was a World Mobile table. So you queued up to get in, and then there was a World Mobile table. So it was, for the first time, I got to meet people from the team: Emmanuel, Josie, George, and then there was Marcus, the filmmaker. So that was brilliant to meet all those people in real life. Probably instantly, kind of, that was one of my highlights, because it was just so exciting just to meet all these people in real life. Every single person that came in got some like a bag with some swag in it, some Cardano Summit t-shirts and so on. And at the World Mobile table, they were giving out World Mobile hats or t-shirts. So everybody that came into the summit had got exposure to World Mobile at that point. So that was one of my most exciting points, like instantly. And upstairs we had a venue with a big screen and lots of chairs, so we could sit and watch. I think it was if you took part in the virtual event, anybody, I think we had the main stage. I think that's what we had in our venue. So we could sit there and watch that, and then there was a networking room where at certain times of day there was food and drinks, so we could go and just chat. So some people just stayed out there the whole time just chatting, and so people would just drift in and out between the two spaces. And then
I heard some mixed news about the VR experience and the physical venues, because apparently some of them got quite full in Spain. I believe someone mentioned that. By the way, Richie, welcome. Good to have you join us. We're just doing the first look at the summit. So this VR thing, it kind of looked, from the outside, I did not sign in, it looked like a Second Life meeting from 2007. And I heard some people giving feedback that it was difficult to run, and also some complaints about the general streaming stuttering. And I just wanted to see, was that noticeable? Was that something that hindered your experience as attendees?
So actually, I can't comment because I was at a wedding. So the very short part that I actually managed to see, I saw it through another person's screen. And I think this person has a really good connection. Actually, I had zero problems because I was watching it through someone else. Maybe Richie can say something. Richie, did you try to log in yourself?
Yeah, I actually tried logging in and actually went hunting for the NFT parts. It was a good event. It was a cool event.
Maybe there was something there when we heard the noise on the communities. Maybe it was a thing with people's laptops and personal connections holding them back a little bit. I have some things I'd love us to talk about regarding the summit. I mean, first of all, the news about Dish working with Cardano is an interesting parallel to World Mobile. So as I understand it, Dish is planning to work with Cardano for 8 million digital identities regarding their phone satellite service. So it's a pretty big deal. And it sounds like working with IOHK, they'll probably be using technology which is in some ways similar or potentially compatible with what World Mobile is doing. So that sounded like good news to me. What was your take on that?
I thought, as far as the did part was going, I thought very much I agreed with you. I thought there would be compatibility. It's IOHK, so they'll be using Atala Prism, I would imagine. So I think the more use cases that there are for that is got to be a bonus, definitely. And as far as the actual sort of technology, my first thought when I heard, the telecoms company was like, panic. But after about 3 seconds, I started to realize that, Dish is a very different kind of organization to World Mobile. You know, they're based in the US already, and I think they do satellite TV and stuff like that as well. So they're trying to get into internet service providing. But I think, you know, their business use case is very different to what World Mobile are trying to do with connecting people for phones that are already currently unconnected. So yeah, I think it's going to be a positive rather than any negative. That's what I think.
As competitors, it sounds like Dish and Starlink might be more on the competitive side in, let's say, the United States, but you know, Starlink has a wide open field for satellite services in a lot of the world where companies like Dish are not operating. Maybe Richie, do you have any additional thoughts on that, or do you align with, you know, what we've mentioned so far?
I think Dish will put value to World Mobile. I think they will have a partnership. It will hasten the development of World Mobile in that aspect.
So Chainlink was also an interesting bit of news. Digging into it, it sounds like the Chainlink deal is mostly about providing consistent, you know, reliable data for smart contract execution, which addresses the question of where do we get the data to execute the contracts with? You know, what is the pipeline that we trust? And Chainlink seemed to be setting up to provide that type of data into Cardano, which will allow you to say, oh, I want my smart contracts to, you know, execute on the Chainlink information flows. That sounds like a pretty positive step towards, you know, good maturity, instead of everyone rolls their own on data for their smart contracts.
Yeah, for me, this was a very pleasant surprise. I didn't see this coming. I mean, at the back of my head, I always wish that Chainlink will partner up with Cardano. It always seemed like a possibility. I didn't think it was going to happen this weekend. So I was really happy to hear about it. And you're right, it's definitely a positive step towards working together. I don't know how much you guys follow what's going on Twitter, but the Chainlink, what do they call themselves? Marines. They're known for attacking Cardano. And hopefully this kind of collaboration, you know, starts mending those fences and really start pushing people to think of how to work together and how there's really more value if these different projects work together. I'm really, really happy about this news.
It strikes me that we might have taken a leap towards maturity quite quickly after smart contract capability. I mean, ultimately, to have a growing ecosystem with companies around the world, particularly larger companies investing in financial technology, the integrity of data in for processing is just as important as the capability to execute a contract. Like you, I was very happy with this news. Now, this kind of ties into something from March, which was the information about Hydra. And Hydra is a level 2 off-chain transaction methodology. So basically, it allows higher transaction capability than doing everything on the chain, but using the main chain as a settlement layer to confirm things finally. So that scaling technology has been built by IOHK all along beside Cardano. And this, you know, allows us to have a vision where you can have these off-chain transactions using Hydra, but using the data from Chainlink, so we have data integrity. You know, this time, this moment, these were the prices, and we executed here, and then final settlement on the main transaction layer. So it sounds like we're stacking the stuff that we need for significant scaling and, I suppose, professionalization on smart contracts through Cardano.
Yeah. Totally.
I guess,
I'm really excited by Hydra, and you know that's when to carry on with the you know, the Chainlink thing, the interoperability is something that I've heard Charles talk about a lot. You know, the different chains have got different, you know, use cases. So, you know, obviously Chainlink is a perfect example of their, you know, things joining together where necessary. So yeah, that's really good. And Hydra, yeah, like you say, the millions of transactions per second is the eventual. I think it's 1,000 per head, isn't it? The Hydra heads. And it's going to start off with just one head, probably of 1,000, and then different ones will be added. Yeah, that is going to be phenomenal. When that rolls out, it's really going to make a massive difference to, well, we'll need it for when people like World Mobile have rolled out millions of users. We will need millions of transactions per second on the Cardano chain.
Right.
And speaking of,
go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Speaking of use cases, I think Chainlink has so far mostly been linked to fintech, but actually it's so much more than that. I believe they have existing institutional grade data that is readily available for use for fintech, but after that, it's so much more. It could be prediction markets like for sports or weather data or data for gaming theory, like for digital collectibles or gaming, all these randomness related data. So it's really everyday things. And the scale is so much more than just fintech.
That's such a good point. And I mean, just taking something as trivial as weather, normally if you're a commercial provider who might be pushing weather data, you subscribe to one of the traditional data providers. And of course, you can do that if you're also delivering by smart contracts information, like weather information to bobtv.com. But including it all in a single, pipeline of Chainlink means you don't have to build applications that are more complex than they need to be. Your workflows can just simply pull in the Chainlink APIs. It seems like a quite elegant solution, preventing heavier lifting for people transacting in the community, building new products and services. Exactly as you said, Bibi. It's so cool. We don't even know where to go, right?
Yeah. And now it's great because so you have this Hydra solution, and it's going to address all of those things which are existing. And I think you said something about that in the chat before about the need coming before the technology, instead of creating the technology just for the sake of creating it and then finding a need for it later on. So yeah, it's really exciting.
That was on a quick note we were having in the little Lampo community about how, for instance, I had an assertion that the genius of Steve Jobs had nothing to do with technology. It had his focus on trying to make a problem easier to solve for a consumer, and people will pay high margins for that. And it's very much the opposite of putting technology first and saying, this technology is awesome. What will we solve with it? As opposed to looking at people's lives and saying, oh, that's a slight irritation. We're going to remove that. So as a developer now with Chainlink and with Hydra, it's beginning to look feasible to innovate on new solutions all across Cardano's ecosystem. But let's go negative. let's go. And I'm going to bring up this from the international news. China banning all cryptocurrency transactions. The initial news in the community was twofold. First of all, panic, and second of all, saying, well, China doesn't matter anyway. Though I'm reading through it, my take is that it's not what people necessarily said. China's banning unregulated crypto activity at the same time as pushing out their digital RMB. So it seems to me that China is just saying the Wild West of doing transactions without permits, with doing products on cryptocurrency without permits, that day is done. And people will have to have regulated activity in our market. And I'm not actually negative towards that. I think that's a net positive. It just removes the Wild West. But what's your take? Because it did shake the market this week.
Not sure about it being positive or negative just because of the specific government that's implementing it. But I did sort of have second thoughts about, but because my view on this before was it's the same old news. It's just China doing what it said was going to do. But I read a piece of news from this morning which changed my mind a little bit. There was a miner that cashed out 1,400 BTC, something like that, seconds before China does this new ban. So it's something like $58 million worth. And it made me realize how much of the old China news were really already factored into the market. So obviously, everyone still because if I see this news, I would just stop dealing in China. I'll just find a way to deal outside. But now I realize maybe how that's not really accessible to a lot of people in China. And so this kind of news going forward, the devil is really in the details. You're right. You have to read exactly what they're banning, and there will always be some people who will be hit by whatever they're banning next.
Yeah. That's such a good point. And I mean, looking at something like Bitcoin, given that it's got a fundamental basis on speculation and lack of tangible value, people give it value because they believe it has valuable, but quite frankly, it doesn't. So something like that is incredibly vulnerable to regulation, because as soon as you put financial analysis on it, your call will be, this is a speculative product. But when you look at something like Cardano, we're in a very different world. Going to what's happening directly with IOHK, with things like Chainlink, with Dish, looking at WMT, we're in a token economy for powering services. And of course, you can speculate and buy tokens, but that's not the fundamental driver of value here, and it's not why the organizations are in play. And this touches on something. Our first episode had someone saying, can you talk more about the token-based sharing economy? And maybe we can do that with the contrast to the speculative economy, things like Bitcoin and the speculative economy around Ethereum. Now it's not all speculative, but it has a speculative economy, getting significant impact from the China news. Though Cardano just dropped a little bit, and then of course went up with the event. So do you personally perceive the token-based sharing economy to be quite different to the cryptocurrency traditional economy? And why is that so? What's your optic on this? And do you think that we might increasingly diverge as regulation in China and the United States builds up?
In a quick answer to that, I would say yes. Yeah, but with a slightly longer answer, yeah, I mean, like you say, yeah, Bitcoin is given its value by speculation, what people think it's worth. There is, apart from its use as a store of value, that's its use, isn't it? But obviously Cardano's got, and WMT as an example, WMT's got a massive amount of real world usage for phone call and data. So there will be some, the utility. We're not exactly sure of the mechanics of how that will work, of course, yet. But that real world use of people wanting to make calls, buying their monthly data or their weekly data, subscriptions, and how that gets translated into the tokens, and then, what effect that will have on the price stability of the token in future. I don't think that direct link has really happened in a way before in this space. I am fairly new to this game, so I'm reading and learning as I go. But from what I gather, I don't think there's been anything that's been that directly correlated before, and I'm sure it's going to have a big impact. Yeah.
I did notice that. Oh, go ahead, Vivi. Sorry.
That's what tokens are designed for, right? To insulate that particular economy from whatever's happening outside. That being said, it will never be completely insulated. In fact, even the cryptocurrency industry itself is not even completely insulated from global markets. That's just how it is, because humans are always interconnected by something, right? But it will shield it somehow. Like what Rick said, it's the connection with the real world. In fact, even if it's not necessarily a tangible connection as well, if you have a token that's related to gaming and you see that there are a lot of users in that particular platform and it keeps increasing and the games are getting better and it's interesting, why would you sell it even when the market is tanking? And you see that as well in some projects as well. While the markets were tanking and reacting to China news, there are some tokens there relating to launch pads that were skyrocketing. So I guess that's good for diversification. That's good that the tokens are getting more and more related to exactly what they're being used for, as opposed to just market movements in general. So yeah, I think it will shield the respective economies somehow.
Running with the gaming thing, NFTs, of course, in hindsight, were obvious and inevitable ever since the ecosystem of World of Warcraft, in-game clothes and weapons being sold for immense sums of money, which is not a rational activity, but it's what people do, and that's what they do. That's the market. And as you say, Vivi, if people are transacting around something like that, they might decide to hold on to their NFT or their World of Warcraft sword. And in fact, they do. Those are relatively stable economies where you have mature digital assets selling.
Yeah.
It's weird, but it works.
Yeah.
I suppose one thing that'll happen is we'll end up with the games, which currently all have their own in-game currency and so on, eventually using tokens on chains as a perhaps even inter-game interoperability of assets. And people will innovate. Now, on all of this, I did a survey the other day on the unofficial WMT Price Talk Telegram channel. And I was wondering if we could very quickly look at the results from that and then get your take. Alrighty, I'd like to do a tiny bit of a detour from things around the Cardano Summit and look at some of the community sentiment we've seen recently. So there's an unofficial WMT pricing Telegram channel. And of course, it's not indicative of any official stance or any official guidance from either World Mobile or its community ambassadors and admins and so on. However, it provides a pulse of what's happening in community sentiment. And about a week ago, I ran a poll on it to get some idea of where people thought pricing would be on WMT about 24 hours after it eventually gets listed on exchanges. This is, to be honest, not an important metric for investors. It is simply something that may or may not happen. But a lot of people care about it. The unofficial price channel is full of constant talk about listing prices. In the official WMT Telegram channels, people bring it up and get, of course, redirected to things like the unofficial channel, because we don't want pricing discussions on the official channel as speculation. Anyway, sentiment. Where's the market at? I'm going to share my screen and show you. I've got a few notes. Here we go. So about 10% of the unofficial pricing channel took part in the survey. And we discovered a couple of data points that might be useful for you. The largest band of prediction is between 50 cents and $2 in the first 24 hours after listing. So that's about 60% of the total votes. People thought that's where the pricing would land, which is, quite a bit up from the 20-cent initial value of the token. The band concentrating the majority of votes between $1 and $2. That's 48% of people who cast a vote thought that pricing would land there 24 hours after listing. The most popular individual pricing prediction with 20% of the votes is $2. Now, interestingly, only 7% of the voters see $5 as a likely outcome, but 21% see $10 or $20 as a likely outcome. On the higher end of the predictions, we see 11% at about $20 as the largest block on the high end. What does this all mean? Well, fundamentally, it doesn't mean anything. It's people who are already bought into the idea that WMT is a good idea, speculating on the basis of limited forward-looking knowledge on pricing. So it's not a fundamental measure. But let's see, on the enthusiasm scale, the people who are bought into it, the people who feel good about it, the people who are speculating about where it will go in the first 24 hours after exchange listing because of their personal belief in the momentum of the ecosystem. Indicators. There's a conservative pricing band, first of all, between 50 cents and $1. And that's occupied by 28% of people. So this is people who think that there's an upside, but they see the upside as a relatively constrained multiple. So, 2.5 to 5 multiple, which from a traditional perspective is extremely high. You'd expect to see, let's say, in the world of stocks, you'd expect to see an upside of maybe 20%, 30%, not multiples of initial listing. But there you go, crypto's different. And looking at something like this utility token is different too. Now there's a bullish band between $1.50 and $2, and that's occupied by 22% of people. So the initial conservative band, 28%, this band, 22% of people. And these people see quite a significant multiple within the first 24 hours. They obviously are very enthusiastic about the potential of the token. The third band I'd refer to as an extremely bullish band. They see between 10 and 20 US dollars, and that's 21% of the votes. That is a lot of upside. Regarding official guidance from World Mobile, from people representing or advising World Mobile, there is no guidance. It's going to play out on the market. We'll see how it happens. But that's a snapshot of what you think community people might be thinking. People speculating about price, who want to speculate about price, who are already interested in the ecosystem, are looking at these concepts. Take it as you will, but it's the first time we've had pricing analysis on community sentiment in this area. All right, thanks for your patience at looking at that pre-recorded bit, because there were all the numbers I had to read off my notes. All righty, so what's your take on that survey? What's your feel regarding the community sentiment?
Well, bullish in general, obviously. I feel like the variety in responses, the way it's spread out, because it's a very specific question. First 24 hours of exchange listing. It implies a lot of assumptions there. Like what you said, we have very limited forward-looking information. What exchange will it list in? What's the general market like? When will it be listed? Things like that. So I think a lot of that is coming from there. Just based off of the conversations I've had here in the Price Talk a long time ago, and also more recently outside of the World Mobile chats, I think the bullishness is largely coming from the fact that the TGE was not accessible to a majority of the market. North America is excluded, and a lot of other big markets as well, Japan, most of South America, Africa, let's not forget, only South Africa was included. That's a massive demand. And just, I guess, as an anecdote, in Twitter, I tweet a lot of projects. I tweet a lot of news bits there, all crypto related. But World Mobile is the only project where I get messages from strangers asking me about it and asking how to buy it. So just from feeling it, I think there's really a huge demand for World Mobile. I can't say I completely disagree with some people who are extremely bullish about the first 24 hours because it can really get wild.
That's a good point. I mean, the amount of people on the official Telegram channel, it's well over 8,000 people. And a lot of them are from jurisdictions where, for regulatory reasons and abundance of caution, the initial token generation event assets were not made available. I know some people are a bit grumpy about that, but it's far better to get the governance right, extremely right, when you're building a utility token than not. And as you say, that means there's a huge amount of pent-up demand. Rick, what was the feel on the floor with people at the event? Were there people there representing additional demand, or was this already a relatively small event of the people who already bought it already in?
So I talked to quite a lot of people last night. I'm fairly recognizable in, especially if you see my video and so on. So quite a few people came up and talked to me in the sort of networking section, sometimes in little groups. So you would have, it's quite weird the way it happens, networking, because sometimes people appear at one go, like 2 or 3 of them, and you think they know each other, but they don't. It's just random. They just happen to turn up at the same time. But so, you start having this conversation and talking about World Mobile and, how the sharing economy works. Basically, some of them have never heard of it before. Maybe one of them has, but the other ones haven't. And then you start going through it all. and then people start asking you questions, and then their eyes start lighting up and they start seeing how it's going to work. So yeah, there were people that had not heard of World Mobile before, and just people were just wandering around the different tables, just coming to talk. Some of them, were developers, and some of them had got Catalyst funding, and they were talking about, whatever they'd been working on, and then they would ask what we were doing. But yeah, people were interested in the project on the floor. That definitely. And going back to the survey results, the question is a very specific question. As like Bibi says, there's lots of factors that could affect your answer. Whether when is it listing, which exchanges is it listings, but also the actual specific question, is it like, what is the price going to be after 24 hours? Or what is the highest price that the token might reach within that 24-hour period? These are all kind of different questions. And in the price chat, all of those things have been discussed. So, if there is a lot of demand, which it seems like there might be from the US and Canada, depending on when those people start to buy and how much the supply is, you might see a sort of a spike. Spikes tend to happen, don't they, with demand? Oh, yeah. But how long will that last? So it could go very high and then drop very quickly. So you might, some of these crypto projects have had absolutely insane 500 times spikes, but do they last there for more than, minutes? And this is the question, so when I was answering that question, I was trying to figure to myself, well, my answer was like, what would it be after 24 hours? Where is it going to sit 24 hours later? Rather than what I think is the highest spike that might occur for seconds or minutes. So yeah, there's a whole. I think that's why you've got the two bands. You'd expect it to be like a normal Gaussian distribution of answers, but the fact there's a low bump and then a high bump is a strange result, and I think that is why it's those two ways of thinking.
And of course, there's a couple of factors excluded from pricing per se, but related to that market demand. First of all, it seems from what we see in the official chat, a lot of people in WMT are holding. They're planning to hold it for a long time. And that's obviously going to elevate pricing on the open market because there won't be that much supply available for purchase. And second of all, there's a bunch of people who want to do things like set up Earth nodes. So that's significant demand for chunks of WMT. And then, of course, for one reason or another, we have some speculators entering the ecosystem. And they tend to pull prices out of thin air. I make a general observation. But their influence could have a significant impact if indeed they attempt to buy a lot of WMT quickly. So yeah, I looked at it as after 24 hours, where's it likely to stand? And I actually think that's not the important question by any measure. I mean, the reason I put that survey out was because so many people were talking about listing prices and speculating. I think the question we should be asking is, where do we think, based on fundamentals, pricing is likely to go in 6 months, a year, 2 years? And I think that's kind of the good question to have, because it forces you to look at WMT's rollout, plans, and then implementation. And it gives you time to assess how many people are actually buying for Earth nodes. Have a bunch of people said they're going to do it and they can't get tokens yet, but they don't actually. And you need horizon to begin to feel this out and see what the actual market demand is. So I've been surprised at how many people care about the listing price, or in fact, care about when it's being listed. I don't think those are important questions for the ecosystem per se. I mean, obviously, it should be listed. But yeah, 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, those are the horizons where I think useful data will be. What's your take?
Richie, do you want to go?
Yeah, Richie, you've been quiet. Help us out.
I'm kind of shy. Actually, I'm still processing what you guys are talking about. Yeah.
I guess for me,
go, Bibi, go.
In the speculator's defense, I've been talking to a few people about comparing projects that have recently done their initial sale and some about to do their initial sale, and where would you rather put your money? And I think a lot of these people, they haven't told me this, but I just assume this. Some of these people, I think, have gone all in on crypto. So it's an issue of allocating scarce resources, right? So that's why they have to go into such detail in terms of prediction. What's it going to be in the first 24 hours? Because I really want to accumulate more World Mobile tokens. I think this is going to be the best project in the next 10 years. But I feel like I don't have enough. Maybe I can go do something else first. So I think that's part of it as well. Another part of the variety in the answers, I think, is coming from where people compare World Mobile to which project. In previous chats there, I've seen people compare it to projects that go 100x but with starting market caps of 1 million. So maybe they're thinking about those projects.
Right.
Maybe others who have been in the space for a bit longer might be able to make that distinction between large caps and small caps and compare it to the same sized kind of project. But yeah, I think that's what I've seen so far.
Such a good point. I mean, if you had timed, let's say, the Shiba Inu token, the multiples were absolutely insane, but it went from worth nothing to worth very little. And that's how the multiple was so high, where Cardano is already a pretty big ecosystem, and World Mobile is a mapped economy. So we kind of have a feel for how big this market space is and where it's going, which is a different dynamic. And you know, I'm a very dubious person about speculation, but that's just my take. There's plenty of speculators. There's plenty of speculators who do well, plenty who get wiped out, and it's exactly the same for long-term investors. So more speculators tend to get wiped out than long-term investors, but risk reward. And one observation I've got, if you're in the unofficial price channel, everyone has their own take, their own metrics, their own tolerance to risk. If someone gets really angry about anything that's different from their price prediction, they're afraid of something, or they're blind to something. You know, we're all going to land differently. Not everyone will get the market right, and that's fine. It's because people are different. But if someone gets angry about that stuff, I always think that's a them issue as opposed to a market issue. I don't know what your take is. I mean, generally our community is very positive, but I have noticed a few antsy people in the unofficial pricing space.
Yeah. Well, you know, always in life, people have got their opinion, and you know, you would like to believe that you know and understand the world, wouldn't you? Because if you don't know and understand the world, you don't even know which side of bed to get out of on the morning. If you can't be sure that you need to get out of that side and that side is a wall, you know, like, you know, and you bang your head on it, you have to operate that in that kind of assumption that you understand what's going on. But you need to be willing to listen to other people's opinions and learn where necessary. You know, try, by all means, if you believe what you think is true, argue the case. But at the same time, you need to be willing to listen to other people. And some people are great at the arguing part, but whenever there's any conflicting information, you know, what you should do is weigh it up, try and assess how strong the conflicting information is, and if it should perhaps modify your viewpoint. Not everybody's good at that. Some people just see conflicting information and they just get angry because that upsets their little world. You know, it's comfortable where what you know is comfortable, and change is uncomfortable. But if you're not prepared to listen to that, then yeah, you just get angry and you won't grow as an individual. So yeah, we're just seeing that in the price chat, I think.
I think to add is more in the price chat that people want to have, you know, quick bucks. Like I think they have the mindset of, okay, buy the token early, then okay, it will moonshot, and okay, I'll not work for a lifetime. It's like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to add on the point about comfort, I think I mentioned it in the last episode as well, in our first episode, that people are still figuring out that comfort level. And I think a lot of these people who express a sense of panic when World Mobile is not listed yet. Maybe some of them, let's not forget, a lot of people have been victimized by rug pulls.
Yes.
It's more common than you think. Maybe not all big amounts, but it's a considerable number of people who have been affected by rug pulls. And so if you have a project that doesn't list immediately and doesn't give you advanced information about where it's going to list, it makes them feel uneasy, especially when they see that it's possible for other projects. That's why I think it's really important that the admins and the ambassadors and all the usual people in the chat constantly remind the community that World Mobile does things slow and deliberate and very, very careful, because this is a long-term project. We want to be here for a long time and not trip any wires, So yeah, I think if there's one reminder I would give to these people, it's that. And instead of being uneasy about that, they should take comfort in that's how the team are doing things.
That's such a good point. And especially the interconnected optic. If World Mobile wants to get, let's say, telecom licenses in many countries, when you apply to a regulator, they look at how you're regulated and how you've acted in the market. And they won't just look at how did you deploy a network in Zanzibar. They'll look at, well, you're using a utility token. How have you acted with that? So it's really important to have a very tidy governance play to make life as frictionless as possible. Though it can be frustrating in the speed of light crypto space where people aren't used to waiting.
Yeah, 100%. One thing that you touched on earlier on, Shane, was the how the token price will change as a result of the real world question. And there's a thing about using, in some countries we've been told, if it's possible, you will be able to pay for your service, your data, in WMT, and in other countries you maybe would pay in your local currency, and then somehow that maybe get converted to WMT at a particular rate. And one thing, I don't know if you mentioned this in the last video, Shane, or if it was in the chat, but the idea that, if you talk about data, for example, if you wanted to buy 5 gigabytes of data, perhaps in the UK it might cost you sort of equivalent of $10. Perhaps in the US it might cost you $5. Perhaps in France it might cost you $7. Perhaps in Africa it might cost you $30. So there's already different prices for different regions, if you thought it in terms of dollars. So if you're thinking in terms of WMT, there might be a different kind of rate for exchange rate for sort of data and minutes to WMT for all of the different local currencies. But juggling all those pieces in your head, various exchange rates from data to local currencies to dollars and back again, is quite confusing. And the way it will actually work and how then that will affect the global token price is quite confusing. And it remains to be seen how it's actually going to play out in real life.
This reminds me of Airbnb and Uber in that digital arbitration it tends to drive down market pricing because you've got multiple new entrants or entrants that just have new pricing insights. So I can reach someone across the world for my B&B. I no longer have the same occupancy rate. It's gone up. I can charge less. And this kind of arbitration is only possible in a digital world where you have a lot of reach and can shop around. And that tends to depress prices and increase options, which of course is great. Though some entities which predicated their profit planning on, let's say, higher localized prices will inevitably they'll get downward pricing pressure from this. I'm not sure that's a bad thing for the consumer, though.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I'm also like Rick, I'm excited to see how exactly it's going to work out, because remember, at this point we don't actually know where the conversion will happen. That's not been revealed to us. That's still a trade secret. So we won't see that until it's launched. It might not even be explicitly explained to us. We might have to figure that out on our own. I don't know. Yeah, that's exciting. I don't know what level the conversion is going to happen at. If it's if it's at the store level, doesn't seem possible, right? Because if they're not allowed to hold cryptos, it doesn't make sense to do that at the access level, at the air node level, for example. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see maybe in the earth node mechanics, some clues to that.
Yeah.
And Rick hit on a very good point that the arbitration process is something that right now we can't predict, right? I mean, even if World Mobile is doing X, the fact is World Mobile token can and will be utilized by other parties for other purposes. So it's going to be a case of market shakeout, and we need to keep analyzing this, and hopefully the community will continue to be so great to do so. Let's begin to wrap up here, and if there was one thing you could tell people in the community right now, what would you tell them? And I'll just get started and then pass over to you. I would tell people, be patient. I am a middle-aged investor, and I would say that the amount of times there was a fleeting moment to invest and cash out is absolutely minuscule. So, be patient. If you are not hitting the button in the first 5 seconds of an exchange listing, it doesn't matter. And calm down a bit to give yourself more time for analysis, and just bear in mind that what you're seeing now, while there's some nuances in utility tokens and there's nuances in cryptocurrency, fundamentally people have been investing in stuff, particularly stuff tied to real world services, for a couple of 100 years. And it plays out in the market space. You get in early. Everyone watching this has got in early or is about to. And then you've got a risk tolerance about how long you hold and sell. But unless you're a day trader or a speculator looking for a massive bump and run, your horizon is not weeks. So relax. That would be my tip. How about you guys? What would you tell someone?
For me, actually, I agree with you, Shane, and I'm also here for the long term. And I want to see World Mobile to be one of the top coins maybe in the near future. And of course, the team, also the World Mobile team, is also working so hard. And even if they are not active in the group, in the main group, or maybe some of the members are active in the group, Cedric and Zach is, I think, kind of laying low right now, or not replying often. But we know that they are working hard on this.
Yeah. I'd carry on from that. I mean, I do know I've actually now met a lot of the team members yesterday, and I'll meet some more today. They have been working very hard. They're great people. Now I've got to meet them in flesh. I've obviously interacted, via the square box Zoom scenario, but having met them in the real, people are thoroughly committed to the World Mobile, mission of connecting the other half of the world, and and making those kind of changes, and the sharing economy, the whole ethos of the project. And it's a long-term project. Emmanuel, who I met yesterday, he's been involved with kind of the regulatory side, been getting involved with those kind of meetings, and also kind of the deployment. I don't know, you may have seen him on top of a roof in Zanzibar with one of those aerials at some point. Just seeing what the team are up to. There's a lot going on. There's some really talented people there. So yes, they may not be in the Telegram chat, but they are busy and they are working to get this project rolled out. So yes, patience. And one of the GIFs, or GIFs, however you like to pronounce it, that I like is the one with Yoda. Patience, you must learn. That I feel the need to post that every now and then.
I guess one who are posting when.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's mostly what's going on in the channel. When. So, I see Mickey and Zach and so on appear, but there's very little new to say because it's already pinned. So I guess we're just in that waiting period. Okay, but over to you, Bibi, for your Your take.
Yeah, for me, for anyone who's feeling impatient or uneasy with the waiting, just take a step back, remind yourself why you bought the tokens, um, and just soak in the good vibes because we are so lucky to be alive in this time. We are so lucky that Cardano is around. We're so lucky that World Mobile is around, a project that has such a good mission, such a good solution, and a great team that's working behind it. So that alone should make you happy and just be able to sit back and relax and watch it all unfold.
Yeah.
Excellent sentiment. And for those who are going to stick around for the end credits, just be aware that in the end credits, we have Rick caught in the wild singing the World Mobile song.
Yeah,
Must watch.
I love it.
I know, it's awesome. So thank you for recording this show. Let's do another one soon. Maybe we can ask our audience to leave questions in the comments so we can answer what's hot in the community. Thank you for your time. Enjoy the event. Let's see what Mickey says on stage later today, talking about World Mobile at the Cardano Summit. Take care, all.
Thanks, everybody.